The following is a CTV special presentation.
Good evening. I'm Tom Clark. Video games. Now, if you have kids in the house, there's a very good chance that they are hooked on them. Studies show that today's kids and teenagers spend more time playing games than they do watching television. The video game industry is growing so fast that it's estimated that in 5 years, it will be worth $86 billion a year. That's 5 times more than the current music recording business. Now, the most popular games seem to be addictive. Many teenagers will turn their backs on schoolwork, other interests, even family, to play them endlessly. Many of the games, though, have disturbing, violent themes, and that's causing a lot of concern. But are they addictive? Can all the exposure to violence harm the kids? Well, producer Bengers started asking himself these questions when his son became addicted to one game. His journey into a disturbing and surprising virtual world is the subject of tonight's documentary, First Person Shooter.
It starts quite simply. On one of those afternoons, in a small incident, one's world changes forever.
Chill!
Went down to the basement, and there was my son and his 2 friends sitting on the carpet in front of the TV screen with their thing going like this.
I'm gonna rush, and I'm gonna kill you all. I pulled you really hard.
And they're saying, kill, get him!
Move up.
I said, hi guys, it's me. They completely ignored me. And they were playing a game which basically seemed to me to involve mayhem.
Okay, there's one left.
You got burned, man.
I got 3.
I know it's artificial and I know it's virtual, but there's something going on here I have to find out about. This story is about video games, and about how one particular game came between me and my 16-year-old son. It was a painful time, and it's not over. But it made me start asking questions. I wanted to know whether the games were addictive or made kids violent. I wanted to know if other parents were having problems. I wanted to meet the people who actually make the games and sell them. I wanted to know about the gamers themselves, about who plays the first-person shooter, and what the game does to a young mind.
Don't get much better than this.
Oh, he's getting knife. Let's do it. Oh, my God.
A lot of kids, almost all boys, spend a lot more time playing video games. One study found if they're online at home, they'll spend up to 17 hours a week playing. It's a Game Boy generation. For my son, these interactive video games are more powerful and compelling than television, movies, or the internet. We tried to control it, but it took over his life, crowding out school and family. The game my son plays is called Counter-Strike. It's a first-person shooter, the most popular game of that kind in the world, and it works like this. 5 players form a terrorist clan which has 3 minutes to wipe out an opposing clan and achieve its goal, usually to detonate a bomb. The more you kill, the more money you get to spend on more lethal weapons. Counter-Strike is by no means the most violent video game. There are several other games which are much more grisly. But its combination of strategy, skill, and action has made Counter-Strike irresistibly popular. At this very moment, around the globe, tens of thousands are logged on to servers like these. It's rated as M for mature, suitable for 17 and older, But the rating system is voluntary, drawn up by the people who make the games. And it's not much more than symbolic.
Oh, that was such a fluke.
For my son, this video game would displace all the other things he'd been interested in. Up to the age of 14, so much seemed to come so easy. Ontario baseball championships, ribbons for this and that, chess, music, soccer, hockey, more baseball. We did let him watch television and play the early video games pretty well every day, probably way too much.
I guess the first time I ever played a first-person shooter type of game was actually with Mario. It was like a 2-in-1 game called Duck Hunt, and you were a hunter with a gun, and actually outside of the screen you were holding an orange or little orange pistol, and you were supposed to shoot down the ducks.
Then something changed. I don't know what it was, some huge adolescent gear change.
When I played Counter-Strike for the first time, my friend brought me down to this a local LAN place, and it was really enjoyable, and it just felt like it was a real community that I was sort of a part of.
So it's all about downtime, because this is just such a way to just like pass time when you're really bored and just got nothing to do.
As his interest in the game took over, he dropped out of family life. I went from concern to panic in about 2 months flat, and the game became an escalating tug-of-war between us. First, I tried to limit his gaming a little bit, to 1 hour a day, but my wife knew his studies were suffering.
If he had an essay to do that presented any sort of difficulty, he would choose to play the computer game. Anything that presented any difficulty, choose to play the computer game instead. So he could avoid reality completely by going into virtual reality.
We felt my son became addicted to this game. He disagrees.
It's not an addictive sort of substance like drugs are. It's just something that you enjoy enough that you want to do a lot. And maybe there's some cases where it's so excessive that it can be considered an addiction, but I don't think I have any sort of addiction.
For a while, I took away his computer completely. But he avoided school, stayed out late at night playing elsewhere. In desperation, I offered a deal. If he would stay at home and return to school, I'd buy him a more powerful computer with high-speed internet. It worked for a while, but before long, he was back at the screen all the time. So I banned video games altogether at home. He just took off into the streets to find them. Some nights when Griffin didn't come home at all, I'd go looking for him, usually ending up downtown at his favorite video game place. A dingy cave above the strip where I'd search for him in a dense crowd of transfixed players. In these, the opium dens of the 21st century, an electronic hook deep in a brain soothed by the balm of bloodless killing. I'm close to him now. He doesn't even know I'm here. Griffin played with a bunch of kids, so I asked their parents if they were having problems with the amount of time their kids were on the game. Gavin's mum, Noreen.
After supper, he would go onto the computer and probably play his games. And again, I didn't pay much attention. But then I started waking up in the middle of the night. I'd have to go to the washroom or something. I'd see his light on, and I'd see him on there.
So what did you do? You physically removed
I physically told him to remove it, or I would. Now, he don't want me to remove it, because I'll just pull every cord. I'll just... Phew.
So Gavin did cut back. Adam's folks didn't like the game either and worried that it affected his grades. They thought about banning it.
If I banned it in the house, well, Ryan lives right down the street and Aiden lives across the street and they have that game. So then they just go there to play rather than play here.
Like when I was growing up, I play ball or something, this is what he likes to do. And he's determined to do it.
I don't know what the solution is. You know, people say, don't worry, it's a phase. But...
No, I'm tired of hearing people say, don't worry, it's a phase, and I'm tired of people saying it's just, you know, teenagehood. Because we've said that a lot to comfort ourselves, but this is a very, very serious thing.
I needed more information, so I decided to plunge in even further. The boys wanted to go to a huge Counter-Strike tournament in Washington, D.C. So after getting their parents' permission, I rented a colossal motorhome and headed south. The risk was that I would feed their addiction further, but I thought it was a chance worth taking. The Counter-Strike tournament was a 17-hour drive to Washington, D.C. Maybe I'll show them the White House and they'll develop a sudden interest in presidential politics or something. I don't know. It's worth a try. On the way down, I'm already learning all sorts of fascinating stuff about the game.
Once we get AWPs, we can hold them off. If we're winning like 7-2 or something, there should be a round where we rush one area.
And then two guys, including somebody with the bomb, could wait outside of the gate on our side. And then once we get the go, we rush the gate.
There's only like 2 or 3 CTs, and they can't stop 5 guys. They only have 12 bullets each.
Counter-Strike obviously gives them friendship and a language all of their own, about tactics, weapons, the paths to glory. Counter-Strike even gives them new identities. They're all members of a clan called Downtown Gamers. Turns out this BYOC, Bring Your Own Computer tournament, is being held in a convention center on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., a place called Centerville, USA. And for this bunch of gee-whiz teenagers, their first big Counter-Strike tournament won't be easy. The best first-person shooters in the world are here, some from as far away as Sweden and Korea. Others have driven through the night from places like Texas and New Brunswick. There are more than 100 clans here. Their names alone bespeak a world of fantasy heroes caught up in the endless combat of cyber war. They're not here for the money. The winner gets only $500 and a return ticket to the World Championships in Dallas.
Digital is CD spawn, the left on CD spawn.
If they lose round one, it's a long way home.
No, you're not upping that. You guys not listen.
They're on edge.
Silence Colt, or just any Colt, whatever.
Please connect to your servers using the Archon password.
Let me do that. I can do that. Griff, I know what you're talking about. I could do that.
They're up against a clan of musicians from Georgia.
All right, in the server, you guys may proceed with the match.
Watch out! They just threw HEs! Fall back! Gather, guys.
Go doors, guys. Go doors.
Go, go!
So unbelievable, man.
I get the competitive rush from all of this, but I can't help being deeply troubled. Surely, even in the name of rivalry and fun, this kind of mayhem couldn't be doing them any good. I'm thinking about all the epic issues of the 20th century and the wars of my lifetime. But for them, war is a game, and happiness, a digital bomb.
Counter-terrorists win.
In this war, the Toronto kids obliterate the southern enemy.
We just suck. I mean, we just got owned so bad. I'm so happy we got that match.
Some see gamers as the athletes of the cyber age. But what are these kids giving up to do this, day after day, night after night? Late on day 2 of the Washington Counter-Strike tournament, I noticed parents, mums, wandering through the herd searching for their lost kids. They all tell me they've had tremendous problems controlling their kids' total immersion into video games. For Susan Ives, a Washington designer, games have been a very serious matter.
It's an absolute hell because, you know, it's been really awful.
She feels the game has turned her son against her.
His cutoff time was 10 o'clock. And I said, okay, it's 10 o'clock, and he wouldn't turn the game off. So I physically turned off the hard drive myself, and he took my arm, and he twisted it, and he gave me this look like he was going to kill me. And I backed off, and he picked up the coffee table, and he threw the coffee table across the room.
There's a guy upstairs. Stick together, guys.
In Griffin's clan, Adam Teitelbaum, a.k.a. Flip96, locks in for another round. He's one of the best players here. He's very bright. His school marks are up in the 90s. But his mum is also very uncomfortable with Counter-Strike.
I really struggled with the violence of the game. He had to get headphones because I couldn't stand hearing the guns and the shooting and the whole sound effects of it.
But there's more. Adam's parents worry because of what happened to their other son when he played another video game.
We had a very difficult experience in our family with our older son, where he was playing a video game. Jason had a seizure, and Adam was there when Jason had the seizure, and that was the beginning of many more seizures.
So I took him to the hospital just to get him checked out, and the 2 nurses came in asking him what I thought were peculiar questions. What were you doing when you blocked out? And he said he was playing a game. What kind of a game? That's when I learned that from the doctor that they have a number of kids coming into the hospital emergency ward after they're playing war games because they've seizured. And then I came back to the house and I looked at the warnings. I only knew about the warnings after the seizure.
Let's take a closer look at the kind of warning that stunned the Teitelbaums. They appear with some video games. They're written by lawyers and they're meant to inoculate the game maker against liability. They say, for example, that playing the games may induce epileptic symptoms, quote, even in persons who have no history of prior seizures or epilepsy, unquote, as was the case with Adam's brother.
There were warnings. We didn't, I guess, heed them because we had no history of seizures in our family and we had no prior occurrence, so we just, like everyone else, I guess, general public, we didn't even think about it.
So we have one child here who's throwing the furniture around, a second whose parents live in fear of seizures, and a third who's driving his parents crazy. I came across many stories like these, and I'm wondering if the video game industry is actually paying attention.
Everybody say crazy on the count of 3. Crazy! I'll meet you at the South Gate.
E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo. I came here to find out about the people who make and sell these games. Here at an industry aimed at kids, ironically, no kids are allowed. The exhibitors say they wouldn't be able to get them off the games. 60,000 others are here, about what you'd expect. The nerds, the designers, the lifers, and some exhilarated money guys.
Hello, I am inside your head.
According to the industry's chief spokesman, video games are now the most profitable products in the entertainment business.
In the United States, in the year 2000, we did about $6 billion in retail sales.
Will it be Xbox, the Cube, or PlayStation?
The big names are here, selling digital combat at every turn. They know about the studies that show that most of the games that sell best have violent themes. And they have the audience completely mesmerized. Many people are here to test new games and estimate their appeal to the massively profitable male teen market. That's the motherlode. Over the next 5 years, as today's male teenagers start their working lives, the video games industry expects to grow 71% to $86 billion a year. That's 5 times bigger than the current music recording industry. So a game has to deliver punch, impact, sensation. Manufacturers hook up with the U.S. Navy to develop the most realistic mayhem possible. Even if the pitchman is an actor in camouflage.
What the game does, it puts you in command of the SEAL team. If you're good, there's a lot of fatalities. If you're not, there's only one, and that's yourself.
You know, I've covered 14 wars in my career. I have seen more people murdered on this floor than in my entire career.
No, you haven't seen a single person murdered on this floor. You've seen animated, pixelated characters disappear on a computer screen. That's not murder.
The makers of the games are oh so weary of questions about violence. Dan O'Brien of Vancouver helped develop Counter-Strike.
It's a prohibitionist logic that we've seen again and again in all forms of media. I think people rallied against the waltz in the turn of the century, rock and roll music, or swing music before that, then rock and roll music, then comic books, then films, and then, I mean, this is just another form of entertainment.
If I came here looking for discussion on the addictiveness or violence of these games, let alone seizures, I was in the wrong place. Over 3 days among 60,000 delegates in 3 football field-sized halls, the one reference to the debate about violence was under lock and key in glass cabinets. The industry ratings system. And that's all that's needed, says Doug Lowenstein.
Our responsibility is not to try to regulate the content, of course. Our responsibility is to make sure we provide good and reliable information and let consumers choose what's appropriate for their families. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. But you know, you cannot substitute for parental responsibility. You cannot legislate responsible parenting.
Do the industry's voluntary ratings really keep violent games out of the hands of young teenagers? A test. I gave my 13-year-old friend Nico $80 and asked him to go buy M-rated games. In 1 hour in Toronto, he walked into a variety of stores, from the big box retailers in the mall to mom-and-pop joints on the corner. And this 13-year-old bought video games for teenagers 17 years old and over at will.
How much is it total? $45.99.
He's never asked for his age.
There you go.
And afterwards, he got mad when I wouldn't let him keep the games. Every video game event we went to, over a year, almost half the players of these so-called M-rated games were clearly under the age of 17. Kids of any age buy the most violent video games available. Failing that, just download them from the internet. I can't believe somebody isn't keeping an eye on this.
They are no different than the alcohol or the tobacco or the pornography or the gun industry. They are going to try to make their product available until you make them stop.
So best wishes to a fellow peace warrior.
Maybe Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman is the moral crusader I've been looking for. He's seen war, 18 years in the U.S. military, a member of the elite Army Ranger unit. A thinker, he'd lectured in psychology at West Point, teaching American soldiers how to kill. And he's published 2 books, credibility there. One day, a kid in his hometown went on the rampage. That's how Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman got involved in video games.
In March of 1998, in the little town I retired in, Jonesboro, Arkansas, an 11 and 13-year-old boy gunned down 15 people out in the playground. in my hometown. Why do they have to have all the stinking violence? Why does it have to be there? Because it's the addictive substance.
Grossman believes violent video games are teaching kids to kill, and his message is hitting a chord. He preaches like this more than 200 times a year. Here it's teachers in Vancouver. He feels the new generation of first-person shooters are instruction manuals.
What you learn to do with many of these games is you learn to work your way around the corner, staying alert. And when you finally come far enough that you can just barely see the bad guy, then you engage.
His strongest evidence is that police and military are trained on the same first-person shooters played by the kids.
Grab your weapons and let's go. Forward, forward, forward.
I'm up top. I got the high ground right. Whoa, watch out.
Here, it's the U.S. Marines. They've adapted a game called Doom for tactical training purposes.
Yeah, how you doing?
Nice shot.
These things are particularly effective combat simulators or murder simulators if they're in the hands of a kid.
In Washington, the Battle of the Clans is reaching a climax.
Oh, another guy. Right here. Yes! Yeah! Oh, yes.
The downtown gamers have demolished McCrackers, Cyber, and the covert assault unit.
Just try to get as much attention as you can there.
Guys, change the level. Let's get going.
Now, Prince Charles and the brothers disgruntled. Heavyweights from North Carolina.
Keep this up. Don't move anything. Give nothing. Let's go. Let's kill these guys. Rip them apart, guys. Let's do this.
You have to go their side as well.
You got it, guys. Nice.
The boys leap out to a 7-zip lead.
All right, everybody right hard. Everybody right hard. Right hard.
So Prince Charles starts directing his team from behind. He's now become a 6th player in a 5-player contest. And it's working.
Wait. We're faking.
His clan draws even 7-7.
Come on, guys. They got all the luck, really. In the last couple rounds. A lot.
But it's illegal. The tournament referee investigates and tosses Prince Charles out for something called ghosting.
Yeah, we didn't realize that was
That's illegal.
They're rushing us here.
Justice prevails. Dark Prince is slain.
Game, guys. Final 4.
The kids run out winners. They're in the final 4.
So happy we got that one. Match was so. That's the first time we've lost a round. That's the first time we've actually lost a round this whole tournament.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Here, video games are competitive fun. But back on the lecture circuit, they're being blamed for murder.
You need 3 things to kill. You need a weapon, the skill, and the will to kill. The violent video games provide 2 out of 3. Paducah, Kentucky, we had a 14-year-old boy who fired 8 shots. 8 shots, 8 hits on 8 different children, and 5 of them were headshots.
Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman likes to cite the case of a 14-year-old in Kentucky who went on a deadly shooting spree.
He got this weird blank look on his face with his eyes wide open. He never fired far to the left, he never fired far to the right, and he put 1 bullet in every target that popped up on his screen. What's he doing? He's playing a stinking video game.
I wanted to know exactly which violent video game Michael Carneal was playing. I was a bit surprised Lieutenant Colonel Grossman didn't know.
If they get an opportunity to, they'll do what's called the discovery process. They will interview the kid. They will find out what games he played, what scores he achieved, which were the point-and-shoot games, and start connecting the dots.
If he doesn't know which video game Carneal played, then he can't really link any games to the shootings. So we tracked down a psychiatrist who actually examined Michael Carneal. We asked her if he was acting out video games in real life.
Not the video games, no. Possibly movies.
Gang, the research that we're putting together now indicates these things are master marksmanship training devices.
So Grossman's Exhibit A is not all that clear. He doesn't seem to be letting the facts get in the way of a great crusade. While I'm working my way through that, the US Secret Service issues a rather interesting report. Something called their Threat Assessment Center looked at major incidents of schoolyard violence in the US going back to the 70s. Is there a pattern here? In recent years, did video games play a part? They examined 41 cases speaking to some of the youths involved. Their findings? In only 5 cases did the shooters play violent video games. But the Secret Service doesn't believe playing those games led to the violent act. Neither Grossman, the industry, or the US government is terribly convincing on this. So I'm reduced to attending a conference of academics. Chicago. Maybe here I'll get my answers. Most of the serious thinkers in the world of video games have gathered at the university. The Supreme Court experts.
Regulating it, both from the standpoint of public policy and constitutional law.
Sociologists who say the games are too violent.
Very often seems to be to kill as many moving objects as possible.
Psychologists who say they don't cause violent behavior.
Does not support the view that either television or media of any kind.
And a developer who says violence can be good.
There is a good side to stirring up people's aggressiveness and anger in a fantasy context.
One is reminded of the global warming debate. Lots of theories, no solutions. The British government looked at all the studies it could find on violent video games. Most showed children did become more aggressive after playing these games. Some found no effect at all. And one study actually found computer game addicts have better hand-eye coordination and do better academically than the average kid. It turns out that the debate about media violence is 2,000 years old.
Plato says violent images provoke violent passions and create violent behavior. Therefore, we will ban Homer. Aristotle says no. What it does is to purge these emotions. It's a catharsis. It's the oldest debate in the world.
Even in this distinguished gathering, I couldn't find anyone who could tell me anything conclusive about the real effects of these games.
Death was in the air at Roscoe Street.
But elsewhere, I found Professor Stephen Klein, who's actually tested kids while they play violent video games. He's convinced that the more troubling effects of video games may be something other than physical violence.
Maybe it has less to do with the question of will kids get up and punch each other because they play video games, which I think is less likely, but are we socializing males into a kind of inappropriate set of values and attitudes?
Klein's colleague, sociologist Nick Dyer-Witherford.
What I would look for much more than incitement to violence is the production of depression, loss of affect, emotional deadening, inability to respond to stimuli other than the immediate adrenaline jolt, and the restriction of social relationships to those which occur within a friend-foe wavelength.
What Dyer-Witherford has also noticed is the strange merging of video games with contemporary warfare. It raises the question of how this Game Boy generation will view war.
Terrorists win. What this generates, I think, is a society in which large parts of the public, particularly the young public, come to perceive war as a game.
With so much theorizing around violent video games, I came to Vancouver to meet some people who tried to do something practical about them.
The game seemed to kind of pause so that you could watch the blood squirting out where her arms had been.
Gillian Skeet's group, the coalition opposed to violent entertainment, had been getting calls from worried parents.
I heard of one family whose very young son, 8 years old, was addicted to first-person shooter games. And his behavior changed dramatically as a result. And, you know, he would show the gun and say, "I'm going to blow you away," to his mom.
Gillian Skeet and her friends managed to persuade the former BC government to start an independent rating system for violent video games and to hire 2 inspectors to make sure that stores didn't sell these games to young kids. Her campaign started to attract national attention.
And now it's moving beyond British Columbia. The Alberta teachers have contacted us. Groups in Toronto have contacted us.
But in Los Angeles, the man who heads the industry didn't like what he was seeing up in Canada.
Well, we're concerned about it. We've been working with the province, trying to sort of strike the right balance, again, between what we think is appropriate regulation and appropriate education. And we continue to be hopeful that as we work with the province and the new government there, that we can come to an appropriate balance.
And you can count on these.
A high-powered industry lobbying campaign paid off with the new Liberal government. Within weeks, the law passed by the previous legislature was toast. And the province went back to the industry's voluntary rating system. So in BC, my alarm ringers had been brushed aside. Amid the mixed messages from the public debate, on the home front, we were still dealing with a full-blown video game crisis. In a sleep-deprived moment, my wife asked me to bring her the head of the inventor of Counter-Strike. While in Vancouver, I tracked him down to the sort of neighborhood immigrant dreams are made of. The brains behind the game belong to a 23-year-old computer student, Min Lee, still living at home with Mum and Dad. While his library is clear evidence of violent preoccupations, it was the poster of the baby seal that really took the wind out of my sails. Min Lee's family fled Vietnam in an overcrowded boat when he was a 2-year-old. Now here he is on a quiet Sunday morning, refining cyber death.
Sometimes you watch movies and you get a feel for it, but movies are totally exaggerated. They don't really die like that at all. So you just sort of, you know, just hit yourself in the chest and see what it feels like. That's what I do sometimes.
He likes to check in on the Counter-Strike circuit, still amazed by the number of kids worldwide hooked into his game.
Oh my gosh, it's 4,000. Still at 4,500. So you multiply that by 20, you're getting like 100,000 people.
And wouldn't you know, the inventor of Counter-Strike, who's made more than $250,000 out of the game, happily admits to being addicted himself.
It's addictive. It can get really addictive. I mean, sometimes I find myself playing like 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, because you just want to, like, I don't know, you just want to keep playing because, you know, it's just like a sport, but you never really get tired, you know.
I came looking for an evil genius. Instead, I find a sweet guy who fled one of the worst war zones of the 20th century to slip a little piece of cyber combat into 1 million basements. I wanted to know if he felt any responsibility for the anguish his game is creating between parents and children.
If people can't control themselves, then, I mean, that's really not my responsibility.
Washington semi-final.
Go, guys, go, go, go. Go, go, go.
The Toronto gamers locked computers with a Manhattan clan called the Art of War.
Guys, don't get aggressive.
Led by a 15-year-old.
This way. How did he get? Watch your side, Griffin. They're gonna come.
Bomb has been planted. Hitch! Now all rush clip the spawn.
The New Yorkers leap out to an 11-0 lead.
Go, guys. Anybody need a gun?
went negative. I'm AWPing outside.
Come on, guys, keep it up. We got this game.
White, go back to your spot, White.
Help me. I got 22.
No mercy.
Nice! That's it, guys.
The Toronto team pulls back to 11-11.
Where's the ball? Where?
I'm beginning to see my son's point that there's more to this game than blood and guts.
Keep it up. It's ours.
Gamers aren't looking for that, thinking that kids, what they want in video games is blood and arms and limbs flying all over the place, but that's not what we want. We want, like, good gameplay.
Wooden doors.
Just trying to attract attention. Chill, guys. Hold your position.
The moment of truth comes deep in the tunnel of a nuclear plant. The Toronto gamers are trying to stop the terrorists from planting their bomb. Arcane throws a grenade and kills his own teammate, Shag. A fatal slip. Now Arcane has to protect his original tunnel and abandon Shag's. Shag's opponent sneaks up behind him and, in a hail of gunfire, cuts Arcane down. It's over. New York City 13, Toronto 11. "144 matches, 1,000 fatalities, and 72 hours later, the downtown gamers are heading back north of the border, and they shake hands. I think about this. After every match, they shook hands. They've been playing this murderous game almost non-stop for 3 days. They've reached the end of a cranial marathon. They've died, and they're being polite. When my son first started playing Counter-Strike, it seemed like an innocent hobby. Then it took over his life. He chose the virtual world over the real world, as have millions of other kids. He spent a critical year of his adolescence inside this box, taking refuge from the nagging, overscheduled world of the urban child.
I don't look to make the world understand and everything about it because I don't need them to understand.
You don't want them to understand?
No.
You don't want the outside world involved at all, right?
Not really.
Towards the end of this exhausting year, I told my son to make a choice between the game and his education. He chose the game, and for a while dropped out of school entirely. He's back now, fitting school into his addiction to Counter-Strike. I'm not happy about it. I think he's hunkered down, cut himself off from so many worlds. After this 2-year struggle with my son over these video games, I realized 2 things. As a member of the generation before computers, my youth has no relevance to his. And as a father, I lost a difficult battle to keep the dark side of the information age out of my home. When I see the next wave of 10, 11, 12-year-olds hungry to get a new video game, I worry about them and their parents and the battles they'll inevitably face.
I come home, I don't even do my homework. I'm on 6, maybe 7 hours. I'm from about 4 o'clock till around 7 in the morning. No, not 7 in the morning. No, 3 in the morning. I'm on for hours.
I let them use their own discretion, and it's been fine up to now.
Children are the pioneers of the future, the canaries we send down into the mine of the information age. And as we celebrate this age, we should watch carefully this infatuation with gore and violence. The gamers, the parents, the industry, the crusaders, and the experts are all shooting in the dark.
I'm shooting terrorists. I think I'm a good guy.
Not one of them knows for certain the effects these games are having on the minds that will shape the 21st century.